People make outrageous claims in court, such as, I have a ghost in my house. Who do I sue? Or, the reason my life has gone to hell is because of this demon that is ruining my life, so I'm going to sue them. What happens when people bring paranormal claims into court? Let's find out. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people. It's your best friend Kenny here, and we are back with another spooky, disturbing video. Today we're going to talk about paranormal claims in court. Ghosts, the devil, all sorts of great stuff in the courtroom. Before we get to this video, though, I want to make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Please make sure you're subscribed. Please like this video, and please share this video. Share this video with your dentist. You're in there for your cleaning. Pop on one of my videos so your dentist can sort of be like, what's going on here? Listen to me talk while he cleans your teeth. Or I guess the dental hygienist. Most of them have hygienists now, don't they? And yeah, we could use some more dentists in our spooky people, right? Haunted houses and the law. There is a case called Stambovsky versus Ackley, which is a case involving a haunted house. In 1989, Jeffrey Stambovsky entered into a contract to purchase a mansion in Nyack, New York from Helen Ackley. Stambovsky didn't know this, but Ackley had publicly claimed that the house was haunted, sharing her experiences with the media and even including the house in local ghost tours. Upon learning of the house's spooky reputation, Stambovsky sought to rescind the contract and get his down payment money back, arguing that Ackley had misrepresented the property by failing to disclose its paranormal activity. I'm sure when the judge saw this, the judge probably rolled his eyes and then realized he had an actual thing that he had to make a decision about here. Can you imagine being that judge and getting the haunted house case? Actually, back when I clerked for a judge, I can tell you right now, this case, he loved, I guarantee this judge loved telling all his judge friends about this case. I'm sure they would all line up for coffee and talk about what's going on in the haunted house case. Because this is exactly the kind of stuff that lawyers and judges crack up about. The court recognized the unique circumstances of the case, emphasizing that Stambovsky, as an outsider from out of town, could not have reasonably known about the house's reputation. The court also said that even the most thorough inspection wouldn't reveal the presence of ghosts or the property's reputation for being haunted. The court found that since Ackley was actively promoting the house's haunted status, she created a condition that materially impaired the property's value. This, combined with Stambovsky's inability to discover the condition through reasonable diligence, led the court to create an exception to the caveat emptor, the buyer beware doctrine. Essentially, the court ruled that while the existence of ghosts was not a legal issue, the seller's creation and promotion of a haunted reputation constituted a material fact that should have been disclosed to the buyer. The decision had a significant impact on real estate law, particularly concerning the disclosure of psychologically impacted or stigmatized properties. Another case establishing a seller's duty to disclose is Reed versus King, a case involving a California home where multiple people were murdered 10 years prior. Now here, Robert King failed to disclose that a woman and her 4 children had been murdered in the house. The buyer, Reed, learned of the murders from a neighbor after the sale and sued King, seeking rescission of the contract and damages. She argued that the non-disclosure of the gruesome event materially affected the property's value and her decision to purchase it. The California Court of Appeals ruled in favor of Reed, ruling that the seller had a duty to disclose the murders, even though they did not physically affect the property. The court also acknowledged the potential for abuse, where any disturbing fact could be used to avoid a sale, but argued that murder was a highly unusual circumstance with a potential to significantly psychologically impact the owner or the person living in the house. The court also emphasized that the seller had knowledge of this fact and its potential impact on its property value, while the buyer had no reasonable way of discovering it. The case of Stambovsky versus Ackley and Reeve versus King had a significant impact on the law. The Ghostbuster ruling, which is what Stambovsky is widely referred to in legal scholarship, has influenced subsequent cases involving psychologically impacted properties, haunted properties, properties where crimes occurred, other types of properties. Also, these cases reflect a broader trend in the legal system towards acknowledging the role of psychological factors in legal disputes. While the law traditionally focuses on tangible evidence and objective facts, there is a growing recognition that subjective experiences and psychological impact can have legal significance. This shift is not only evident in real estate law, but has also been seen in tort law and civil law, where emotional distress and psychological harm are increasingly recognized as causes of action for which people can sue. Another case that highlights the intersection between the law and the paranormal is the Hammersmith Ghost Murder case of 1804. In this case, a man named Francis Smith shot and killed a man he believed to be a ghost that had been terrorizing the Hammersmith area of London. The ghost turned out to be a bricklayer named Thomas Millwood, who was dressed in white work clothes. Smith was charged with murder and found guilty, despite his argument being that he acted in self-defense based on his belief that Millwood was a supernatural entity. The case set a legal precedent in the UK regarding self-defense, establishing that mistaken belief, even if genuinely held, may not be a sufficient defense against a criminal charge if the mistake was unreasonable. The background of the case is fascinating. At the end of 1803, reports emerged of a ghost, often described as a tall figure draped in white, lurking in the shadows of the local churchyard and along the dark lanes. Some accounts embellish the ghost with grotesque features, claiming it had horns and glowing eyes and even rattling chains. Others described it as wearing calfskin garments with horns and large glass eyes. The prevailing belief linked the ghost to a man who had unalived himself the previous year and was buried in the churchyard, a practice considered taboo at the time, as it was believed that the souls of unaliving victims could not rest in a religious graveyard. Fear gripped the community as tales of the ghost spread. There were stories of the ghost physically attacking people. 2 women, one elderly and the other pregnant, were claimed to have died from shock with encounters with the ghost. A brewer's assistant named Thomas Groom testified to being physically assaulted by the ghost in the churchyard. He reported seeing the figure rise up from behind a tombstone before grabbing him by the throat. The ghost twisted and disappeared. At the same time, Groom punched at the figure and felt his fist hit something like a soft coat. A wagon driver claimed a ghost jumped out in front of his wagon, causing his horses to bolt. These stories fueled a collective hysteria that would have the fatal consequences of this case. Adding to the escalating fear, a reward was offered for the capture of the Hammersmith ghost. This motivated some residents, including a night watchman named William Girdler, to actively search for the ghost. Girdler even claimed to have chased the ghost one night, witnessing it throw off its shroud to escape. Now, I don't know how a ghost throws off its shroud. Like, if you're a ghost, why are you wearing a shroud? If you're a ghost, why are you wearing anything? Why wouldn't you be just running around in your ghost undies or ghost naked? On January 3rd, 1804, Francis Smith, who was an excise officer, which I guess is a drug and alcohol cop, joined the ranks of the armed civilians patrolling the streets in an attempt to capture the ghost. What were they going to do? What were they going to do with this ghost if they captured him? However, on this night, it was believed that Smith was acting alone. Around 10:30 p.m., while patrolling Black Lion Lane, Smith encountered Thomas Millwood, a bricklayer returning home from a visit from his family. At the corner of Beaver Lane, Millwood, dressed in the white attire customary for his profession, was mistaken by Smith for a ghost in the dim light. Smith, who may have been drunk at the time, the irony of him being an excise cop, loaded his gun and challenged the figure, demanding to know its identity. When Millwood failed to respond, perhaps because he was shocked by the confrontation, Smith fired his gun. The shot hit Millwood in the jaw and killed him instantly. A surgeon who examined the body confirmed the cause of death as a gunshot wound on the left side of the lower jaw. Sadly, Millwood's wife had previously warned him about wearing his white work clothes at night, fearing that he might be mistaken for the ghost. This is why you got to listen to the women in your life. The death of Thomas Millwood sent shockwaves through Hammersmith and beyond. Smith was arrested and charged with willful murder. At the inquest, which is kind of like a grand jury proceeding, the jury found that the victim had been willfully murdered by Francis Smith. His trial became a public spectacle, capturing the attention of the nation as it grappled with the question of culpability in a case where fear and mistaken belief led to a fatal act. Smith's defense argued that he had acted out of genuine fear, believing that he was confronting a supernatural threat. The prosecution argued that his actions were reckless and not reasonable. The jury was initially swayed by Smith's apparent good character and the widespread fear of the ghost, and returned a verdict of manslaughter. However, the judge, Lord Chief Baron Sir Archibald MacDonald, that's a name, refused to accept the verdict. He instructed the jury that Smith's belief in the ghost was irrelevant to the case. The judge argued that all killing amounted to murder unless justified by law or self-defense, and in this instance, neither applied. Here, Millwood had posed no threat to justify the use of legal force. He stated that Smith had not acted in self-defense, and he had not shot Millwood by accident. He had not been provoked by the ghost, nor had he attempted to apprehend it. Millwood had not committed any offense to justify being shot, and even if the supposed ghost had been shot, it would have not been acceptable, as frightening people while pretending to be a ghost was not a serious felony, but a misdemeanor. The jury ultimately found Smith guilty of murder. This case had a profound impact on the development of self-defense law in the UK. It established the principle that a person could be held liable for their actions, even if those actions were a consequence of mistaken belief. But this case highlighted a critical gap in the existing legal framework: the lack of a clear defense for individuals who genuinely believe their actions were necessary, even if that belief was based on a misinterpretation of the situation. Despite the guilty verdict, public sympathy for Smith remained strong. The judge, acknowledging the sentiment, reported the case to King George III, who had the power to commute the sentence. Smith's death sentence was commuted to 1 year's imprisonment. In a twist, the publicity surrounding the case prompted the real Hammersmith ghost to come forward. John Graham, an elderly shoemaker, those shoemakers, stepped forward and claimed responsibility for being the ghost. He confessed to impersonating the ghost to frighten his apprentice, who had been scaring Graham's children with ghost stories. Great job. There's no record that Graham faced any legal consequences for his actions of being this ghost, even though it inadvertently led to the death of an innocent man. The questions are, well, should Graham have been punished? While his actions are seemingly harmless, they contributed to a climate of fear that ultimately resulted in this tragedy. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, how about suing Satan? In 1971, Gerald Mayo, an inmate at the Western Penitentiary in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, filed a lawsuit against Satan and his staff. The case was entitled Gerald Mayo versus Satan and his staff. Gerald Mayo, a 22-year-old prisoner, claimed that Satan had repeatedly caused him misery and unwarranted threats and placed deliberate obstacles in his path, leading to his downfall. He argued that these actions by Satan had deprived him of his constitutional rights, violating various sections of the United States Code. Now, I feel like we all could have this claim against Satan, right? Placing obstacles in our paths, leading to our downfalls, causing all sorts of other problems. If this lawsuit were to go forward, we would all be able to sue Satan. The judge on the case was U.S. District Judge Gerard Weber. The judge acknowledged plaintiff's claims, but expressed serious doubts about whether the complaint constituted a valid cause of action upon which relief could be granted by the court. The court ultimately dismissed the case on procedural grounds, citing several issues. First, jurisdiction. The court questioned whether it had personal jurisdiction over Satan, as the complaint lacked any information about Satan's residence within the district. The judge noted that Satan could be considered a foreign prince, which could raise questions about sovereign immunity from suit. Sovereign immunity is a legal doctrine that prevents courts from exercising jurisdiction over foreign sovereigns or foreign governments, including heads of state and governments, without their consent. In this case, Judge Weber alluded to the possibility that Satan, as a foreign prince, might be entitled to such immunity. Mayo's case was actually a class action lawsuit, and the court acknowledged that the case met 3 of the 4 requirements for a class action lawsuit. The class was so numerous that bringing in all the parties was impracticable. There were questions of law and fact common to the case, and the claims of the represented party were typical of claims of the class. However, the court ruled that it could not determine whether Mayo would adequately represent the interests of the entire class, which is a crucial requirement for a class action to proceed. The judge ruled that there was a service of process issue. Mayo failed to provide instructions to the U.S. Marshals Service on how to serve process on Satan. The failure to provide a valid address for the defendant proved fatal to the case. Citing these reasons, the court dismissed the case. This became the legal precedent that stops you from suing the devil. And it makes sense. How are you going to serve the devil with a lawsuit? Where are you going to find him? Where are you going to serve him? You can't serve him, you can't sue him. Now, what about when ghosts interfere with business decisions? Burchill versus Hammersmith, a 1919 legal dispute in California, delved into the murky waters of spiritualism and its influence on business dealings. After World War I, America found itself in a period of societal and economic recovery. Soldiers returned home seeking new beginnings, and the allure of striking it rich in the oil industry was a powerful motivator. Oil was a hot commodity, still is. Here, Mr. Hermameyer was approached by Ms. Burchill with an extraordinary proposition, and she claimed that a medium had told her that his spirit had identified a large oil reserve under her property. Influenced by this ghost, Ms. Burchill sought an investor to help her tap into this potential fortune. Mr. Hermameyer was captivated by the prospect of all of this potential wealth, and she invested the sum of $10,000 into Ms. Burchill's oil venture. $10,000 in 1919 is equivalent to approximately $190,000 in today's currency, representing a significant investment from Mr. Hermameyer. However, the ghost oil prospector proved to be unreliable, and no oil was found, leaving Mr. Hermameyer out of pocket and upset. He sued Ms. Burchill to recover his lost investment, arguing that his mind was in an abnormal and irrational condition when he made the decision to invest based on the spirit's pronouncements. The court did not accept Mr. Hermameyer's argument. While acknowledging the possibility of communication between spirits and the living, the court maintained that such matters remained within the realm of speculation and could not be considered verifiable facts within legal framework. The court emphasized the earthly nature of law, stating that spirit wills are too celestial for cognizance by earthly tribunals. The court drew a clear distinction between the spiritual and legal realms, asserting that the law could not adjudicate matters based on claims of supernatural intervention. The law relies on tangible proof and rational analysis, which makes it ill-equipped to assess the validity of claims rooted in the supernatural. Ultimately, the court ruled against Hermameyer, and the case was dismissed. I find these cases fascinating. I find the idea of paranormal and spiritual realms making its way into courtrooms is fascinating and fun to read. And it's fascinating to me to see how courts grapple with these issues. Make sure that you're subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Make sure that you like and share this video. Make sure that you are following me on Blue Sky and TikTok. My username is AKBrews. Also follow me on Twitter. I'm AKBrews over there as well. If there is a spooky or disturbing story you would like me to cover, send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. I appreciate you watching my videos. I appreciate your support. Please stay spooky.